Hello, I'm Tom and I'm the driver of this session today.
Hi, I'm Courtney. I'll be the navigator of the session.
Alright, cool. Let's jump into it. Lesson 5, handling incoming data. So jump straight into the code that we did to create the server, right? To handle incoming data. So over here, this is the code that creates the server. So of course we have the port number 3000, and then importing HTTP. So also importing the status codes, and then using this to create the server and creating this instance for the server here. Then here we have this arrow function over here. So this basically converts the JSON object to a readable JSON file. Let me say, or to a readable JSON string using stringify, right? Then here we basically have this app.on request. So we have rec and res. Here rec basically represents the incoming requests. So basically when a user logs, or let me say user logs into the website, a request, the incoming request is basically stored here, and then it's returned, right? And then there's the outgoing response that is stored here, right? And then of course it logs that a new request is received as soon as the request is received. So as soon as a user accesses the web page, a request is received. Then we have this empty array over here, which is where data will be constantly passed to. So here basically, like when a server receives a chunk of data from the request, right, then it's added to the body array. So when a request is made and then there's some data that is received, right, by the server, then that data, which is in body data, will be pushed to the array body over here. Then in this code, we have this buffer.concat over here. So this is basically a callback function over here. So basically a function that takes place after the outer function is done, which is this one here. So when all the data has been received, then there's an event that's triggered, right? When in this line of code, then buffer.concat, right, within this variable body, what it does is it combines all the data chunks into a single buffer, right? So that like all the data is properly stored within the body array. Then toString basically converts the buffer into a readable string. Then console.log prints the body content to the console. Then we have all these console.logs, right? With get JSON string over here. So these lines just log the HTTP method, the URL, as well as the headers. Then our right head over here, basically it sends a response status code. So a specific response status code, which is over here, right? And it also sets the content type to text, HTML, so that it's displayed there in the front end. Then over here we have a response message variable, which basically has the response message in a HTML string. Then of course the app.listen is starting the server on port 3000, and then we just log that the server has started as soon as it starts. So that's the code that is made to create the server. And basically when a user enters the page, the web page, right, a request is sent to the server that we created, and then as soon as that request is sent, a response is sent back, which will be shown in the front end, right? And that response is basically stored in the response message variable, which will be displayed in the front end, the string over here. So you'll see this in the front end. So this comes from the server that we created after sending the request for the response to be returned. So yeah. Then moving on to another server we created, pretty much almost the same with some differences. We added over here, I added basically a dictionary, right? This dictionary root response map is basically for URLs, right? So not a dictionary, sorry, an object. So with this object, right, it stores the URL paths and the corresponding HTML content, right, linked to those paths. So these are the URL paths, this is the HTML content, right? So if someone visits like this page, info, right, then this HTML content will be displayed in the front end, basically. So let's see. So because I have this, I'll have the localhost 4000, and then /info is basically the URL path that leads to the HTML content that says info page. So you can see it here. So let's say I change it to contact, right? And then it will take me to this HTML content which says contact us, because that's the HTML content that is linked to this URL path. So that's what we added over there. So you can see also here there's this URL path hello. So if I change it, then it takes us to this page with the well, let me say it returns the response, say hello, by emailing us here, because that's the HTML content over here. Then within this function here, right? Yeah, within this function, of course, we have the rec and the res, which represents the request and the response from the server. And then right here, basically setting the HTTP response type as well as the content type, which is HTML. Then we added an if statement, right? this if statement is specifically for these URL paths. What it's basically saying is that like if the requested URL is found in root response map, right, then we can send the specific HTML content, which is these ones here, right? But if it's not, so else we will just basically, it will just basically send the welcome message, so the default message. So the root response map is obviously this object. This object contains the URL paths as well as the HTML content linked to those URL paths. So it's saying that if the URL is found in this object, right, then we can basically return the response, which is the HTML content over here. So that's basically the if statement is basically what makes this work whenever we access the URL links. That's what takes us to these HTML content messages over here. So yeah, then of course I also changed the port number to 4000 because my other server is running on 3000 over here. So each server needs its own port number to run on. Then yeah, that's basically lesson 5, handling incoming data.